August 24, 2021, in Goiânia, Brazil, the protagonist of this story was ARIANE Bárbara de Oliveira, who was just 18 years old at the time. Born and raised in Goiânia, she was dedicated, cheerful, a dreamer, and a student with a promising future. She was in high school and had plans to pursue higher education. That early afternoon, she was invited by people she considered friends to go out for a snack. She texted her mother saying, "Mom, I'm going out, I'll be back today, okay?" Never imagining that this would be her final farewell, the atmosphere was one of trust. ARIANE frequented a Publix where she had met three acquaintances: Raíssa Nunes Borges, Jefferson Cavalcante Rodrigues, and Enzo Giacomini Carneiro Matos. According to the investigation, this group had a macabre purpose: to test how far Raíssa was capable of acting without remorse. A cruel plan began to take shape, with ARIANE chosen because of what they considered her fragile profile, something that would make the experiment they had in mind easier. The invitation seemed harmless. They picked her up in a car, smiling, with promises of a normal outing. According to the investigation, ARIANE got into the vehicle confidently, sitting between and the teenager involved. On the side, Enzo was there, and Jefferson was driving. The young woman believed it would just be a casual chat, and so it went on, immersed in a situation that would drastically change her fate. They called it the test. At a certain moment, music started playing, and exchanges of looks and signals between the participants indicated the beginning of that experiment. ARIANE was attacked in a planned way, inside the confined space of the vehicle. The goal was to see if would be able to carry out the act and remain indifferent. Afterward, a demonstration of extreme coldness, tension spread as the lines of reality blurred. A supposedly senseless act, triggered by this cold experimentation that would change lives. ARIANE was silenced forever, and the group, with blood still on their clothes, went to a public place as if nothing had happened. They went to a mall, ate, exchanged messages, and kept up appearances. The body was hidden in a wooded area in the sector, an urban zone of Goiânia, covered with dirt and stones. It remained there until it was found at the end of August. Those were anguishing days for the family, waiting for news. On August 30th, the body was located 6 days after she went missing, and days later, the police arrested those involved. After ARIANE's whereabouts were discovered on August 30th, 2021, the Civil Police of Goiás began a meticulous investigation that soon pointed to three suspects: Raíssa Nunes Borges, Jefferson Cavalcante Rodrigues, and Enzo Giacomini Carneiro Matos, who at the time identified as Freya. What shocked the public the most was the coldness with which those involved acted, even after the events, and even more disturbing, the absurd motivation behind what was revealed to be a social experiment. The alleged mastermind was a young woman with an average academic record and no prior police record. She was seen as calm by those who knew her, although somewhat reserved. Her statement during interrogations was shocking. She wanted to understand the feeling of doing something unforgivable without regret. According to the lead investigator on the case, this was an attempt to satisfy a morbid curiosity with no financial or romantic motive. Jefferson, the driver, had previously demonstrated aggressive behavior and a history of minor crimes. Despite this, nothing in his profile suggested he could be capable of participating in something so disturbing. His coldness in describing the events stunned investigators. According to reports, he drove normally afterward, as if he had merely dropped off a friend at home. Enzo, who was also 18 at the time, displayed identity conflicts, relationship difficulties, and a history of self-harm. During the investigation, he admitted to participating in the plan, but claimed to have been manipulated by Jefferson. Psychologists and forensic experts were called in to understand the trio's minds, and the report indicated no severe mental disorders. In other words, they were fully aware of their actions. Meanwhile, ARIANE's family plunged into mourning. Her mother, deeply shaken, began reporting dreams, premonitions, and pleas for justice. Public outcries spread across social media. The hashtag Justice for ARIANE went viral, sparking discussions about youth, empathy, mental health, and the dangers of forced friendships. Neighbors came together for vigils, marches, religious services, and public demonstrations. The police investigation gathered technical evidence, witness statements, and security camera footage. The car used to transport ARIANE was found and examined. In the trunk, traces of the crime were discovered, reinforcing the account already confessed by the suspects. Even without a history of violent crimes, the three were indicted for evidence concealment and aggravated homicide. Given the degree of planning and coldness involved, But what shook the investigators the most was the content of his cell phone. Archived conversations showed that she had already considered other victims and exchanged cold messages with the group about who would be the guinea pig. This revelation completely changed the direction of the case and gave the story a new weight. As the investigation progressed and social pressure mounted, the pretrial detention of the 3 suspects was ordered in early September 2021. The case gained national attention, appearing in major newspapers and television programs. The entire country was asking itself, how could seemingly ordinary young people with no serious criminal records become involved in something so disturbing? During questioning, displayed an apparently calm demeanor. According to officers who witnessed her statement, she did not cry at any moment and even stated that she felt nothing about what she had done. She said her motivation was to prove to herself that she could carry out something cruel and keep living normally. It was an attempt to break moral boundaries, as described by the prosecutors. Jefferson, in turn, initially tried to deny involvement, but ended up admitting his participation when confronted with evidence in the others' confessions. He said he did not have the courage to stop the act and, although he was present the entire time, was only driving. The court, however, concluded that his role as the driver of the car was essential and that he actively participated in the plan. Enzo, the most emotionally confused, cried during questioning, apologized to the family, and claimed to be remorseful. However, messages found on his cell phone showed that he had been part of the group since the beginning of the planning. The conversations with revealed cold ideas, debates about who to choose, and even macabre jokes. Based on the investigations, the public prosecutor's office filed charges of triple qualified homicide, citing a vile motive, no chance for the victim to defend herself, and the use of cruel means. They were also indicted for concealment and destruction of evidence. The defense tried to argue that the youths were in a compromised emotional state, but psychological reports showed otherwise. One of the most impactful twists occurred during the evidentiary hearing in November 2021, when the prosecution revealed a video recovered from the cloud, in which the 3 were talking shortly after the crime. In the video, the youths laughed, ate snacks, and showed complete disregard for the seriousness of what they had done. This was definitive proof that everything had been premeditated and, worse, treated with indifference. At the hearing, the judge described the case as one of extreme cruelty and lamented the trivialization of human life. From that moment on, it became clear there would be no leniency in sentencing. The trial would be relentless. The case progressed quickly due to public outcry. Asked defense team tried to request a socio-educational measure, claiming she was not fully mature enough to comprehend her actions. But the court determined that her mind was cold, lucid, and her actions calculated. In December 2021, the judge decided to send her to a jury trial, along with Jefferson and Enzo. On December 13th, was sentenced to 19 years and 6 months in prison. The verdict described her behavior as heinous and emphasized that she had shown no signs of remorse throughout the entire process. The judge also highlighted that the choice of the victim was based on her vulnerability and trust, which worsened as guilt. Jefferson was sentenced to 21 years in prison for having been a key player in executing the plan and for the way he tried to conceal the evidence. Enzo, the only one who showed visible remorse, was sentenced to 20 years, also in a closed regime. The court understood that his remorse did not lessen his direct responsibility for what happened. Despite the conviction, the defense attorneys filed an appeal. They argued that the sentence was disproportionate and that there had been undue public exposure. However, the court upheld the sentences, given the severity of the crime and its social impact. Ariane's mother followed every stage of the trial. In interviews, she said she just wanted to understand why. Her pain turned into a fight for stricter laws, especially for cases involving young perpetrators of violent acts. The case also sparked national debates about mental health, friendship networks, and sociopathy among young people. Psychologists began to study the Group S behavior as an extreme example of emotional rupture and a lack of empathy, something still rarely explored in the Brazilian youth context. While the media spotlight remained on the GOIANIA courthouse, the behind-the-scenes atmosphere of the trial revealed an environment full of tension, indignation, and heavy silence. Every time Ariane's name was mentioned, her mother, who was present at every hearing, could not hold back her tears. The family's expression showed a pain that no sentence could ever erase. During the trial, reports emerged that deepened the weight of the case even further. One came from a former classmate, of who said she had noticed changes in the young woman's behavior months earlier. According to her, spoke coldly about testing moral limits and showed a fascination with stories of people who challenged ethics. At the time, no one could have imagined those were real warning signs. Another impactful moment was the testimony of one of the investigators responsible for the forensic analysis. He stated that, while examining the defendant's cell phone data, he discovered a series of messages exchanged in the days leading up to the crime. In those conversations, the group discussed names, strategies, and schedules. It was as if they were planning a cruel prank, something that would become a tragic landmark in the criminal history of the state of Disappearances. According to prison officers, kept to herself, avoided contact, and rarely accepted visitors. Jefferson showed anger over the conviction, insisting that he was not the mastermind and saying he was just in the wrong place with the wrong people. Enzo, meanwhile, showed signs of emotional instability and was referred for psychological counseling inside the prison facility. The impact of the case also affected the region's educational system. Public and private schools began holding discussion circles with psychologists addressing topics such as empathy, the negative influence of friendships, and the dangers of normalizing cold or detached behaviors. ARIANE's name became a symbol of a silent warning. Evil can hide behind young, seemingly ordinary faces. The public prosecutor's office, for its part, emphasized in several interviews that the case should serve as a reference for society to understand the importance of watching for warning signs, closely monitoring young people, and creating channels for dialogue. ARIANE's murder was more than just a violent act. It was a disturbing mirror of the coldness that can develop when feelings like envy, boredom, and a desire for control mix in unprepared minds. The city of GOIΑNIA was never the same again. In the weeks following the sentencing, murals were erected in ARIANE's honor, and a square in the neighborhood where she lived was renamed after her. This symbolic gesture aimed not only to keep her memory alive, but also to encourage reflection on the dangers of relationships disguised as friendship. Amid all of this, a new piece of information changed the course of the public debate. A leaked audio recording sent by one of those involved to a friend before being arrested indicated that the group was planning to act again if nothing went wrong with ARIANE. The short, blunt phrase led to the reopening of part of the investigation. In an effort to determine whether other people might have been at risk before police intervened, this revelation provoked fear and outrage among the victims' family members, who began to question whether the crime could have been prevented. Close friends reported that ARIANE had casually commented that she found very cold and strange at times. But how could you suspect someone you laugh with, study with, and share lunch with? The international repercussions did not take long to appear. Foreign websites began reporting on the case as a disturbing example of youth violence without a clear motive. American and European psychologists started studying the episode as part of a rare behavioral phenomenon, a kind of perverse curiosity about emotional boundaries, where the goal is simply to cross moral lines for pleasure or a personal challenge. Ashtinue baiben after conviction. Some doubts persisted. Why was ARIANE chosen? Was there some hidden resentment, envy, or was she just a random name picked out of convenience? None of the explanations given by those involved managed to convincingly answer this, and that only added to the weight of the mystery. The internet, meanwhile, became a battleground. While many demanded justice, others questioned the system that allowed these young people to reach this point without any prior detection. Take your profiles, theories, YouTube videos, podcast debates, all trying to make sense of something that might never be fully explained. As the case continued to be studied by experts and debated in the press, the figure of Nunes Borges began to take center stage in the public imagination. Born and raised in GOIANIA with an average academic record, she did not, at first glance, display any traits that would set her apart from other teenagers her age. But there was something in her coldness that intrigued even the most experienced investigators. A total absence of remorse, according to statements from those close to her, was introspective, but intelligent and articulate. She liked literature and philosophical subjects, and had already shown an interest in psychology and human behavior. There was also the account of a teacher who, one day, heard her say the phrase, "Are we good or just obedient?" Words that now seemed like a harbinger based on forensic analyses conducted by forensic psychology. A report emerged that caused unease, showed traits of antisocial personality disorder, but did not fit the parameters of legal insanity. In other words, she knew exactly what she was doing. She was capable of distinguishing right from wrong, but chose to act according to her own logic. An intriguing detail in the report stated that took pleasure in manipulating and provoking emotional discomfort in people. Jefferson, on the other hand, began facing difficulties within the prison system. Other inmates did not accept the crime for which he had been convicted, and he had to be transferred to a separate unit for safety reasons. In some interviews with the public defender's office, he continued to claim he was not guilty, trying to downplay his role despite all the evidence. Enzo, the youngest of the three, started receiving continuous psychological support. He showed signs of emotional disorganization, isolation, and sudden crying spells. A prison psychologist even stated anonymously that he doesn't sleep. He replays the moment over and over in his head and seems to live in a loop. Even so, the court upheld his sentence, arguing that remorse did not nullify his direct involvement in the plan. Meanwhile, Ariane's family continued their silent fight for memory and justice. Her mother created a page on social media where she shares texts, prayers, and messages of support for other families who have experienced loss. She became a symbol of strength and dignity, even with the pain that will never cease. As the years went by, the case of Ariane remained alive in the collective memory. The trial had ended, the culprits were in prison, but the void left by Ariane persisted like an open wound. The place where her body was found, in a wooded area in a sector of GOIANIA, began to be visited by residents and family members. Small notes, flowers, improvised crosses, and even letters with pleas for justice were left there. The place, once forgotten, became a silent point of reflection and pain. In 2024, Jefferson's defense team filed a new request for a sentence review, claiming he had been coerced by the others and that his role had been overestimated. However, the request was quickly denied on the grounds that material evidence and witness statements confirmed his active involvement in the plan. The appeal was not only rejected but also reignited public debate. Was there an attempt to downplay the guilt of those involved over time? During that same year, Raisa began serving her sentence in a medium-security women's prison. According to internal reports, she maintained disciplined behavior but never engaged with religious groups or social activities inside the prison, unlike other inmates. One detail drew attention. She spent long periods in silence, writing in notebooks. She shared with no one. The guards did not know the contents, but there was a disturbing pattern, phrases scribbled along the margins, such as "it's all part of the experience," and the first one was the hardest. These notes once again worried psychologists who were monitoring the case from a distance. Although there was no concrete evidence of a risk of the phrases fueled theories about Raisa's true nature. Had she premeditated everything out of a desire to experience absolute control over another life? Or was it the result of an untreated emotional void? Enzo, on the other hand, was transferred to a prison hospital after suffering severe anxiety attacks, panic, and auditory hallucinations. He even reported hearing Ariane's voice at night. During one of his episodes, he repeatedly told the nurses, "She forgave me, but I can't forgive myself." He began receiving care from a psychiatric team and occasional visits from family members. Among the three, he was the only one who showed consistent signs of deep remorse. While those involved served their sentences, the city tried to move forward. Bills inspired by the case were proposed in the GOIANIA City Council, aiming to increase the presence of psychologists in public schools, promote campaigns about toxic friendships, and improve services for young people with behavioral disorders. Today, nearly 4 years after the crime, Ariane's case is still cited as one of the most impactful in the state of GOIANIA. Her name is now remembered not only as a victim, but as a warning to parents, teachers, and young people about the destructive power of malicious influences disguised as friendship. She was a sweet girl, full of dreams, who trusted the wrong people, a mistake that came at a high price. The case has inspired books, academic articles, documentaries, and even international debates about how teenagers can develop extreme behaviors without any prior criminal record. In many events, Ariane is mentioned as an example of why we need to talk more with young people, pay attention to their social circles, and value empathy above all else. But what really happened in that car on that day? Why did Raisa choose Ariane? Was it just a sick curiosity, or was there something deeper hidden between them? Did Jefferson know everything from the beginning, or was he manipulated? And Enzo, did his remorse come too late, or had it always been there, suffocated by his fear of going against the others? The story ends with culprits in prison, a city marked, and a family still trying to rebuild. But the discomfort remains. There is no peaceful ending. Ariane's absence still echoes through school hallways, on social media, and in the memories of those who knew her. The question everyone still asks lingers in the air. What really happened to Ariane Barbara? Leave your theory in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, like and subscribe for more mysteries like this one. And never forget, not every friendship is safe. Watch, ask, take care. Life may depend on it. See you next time. Ante Kikari.